Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Dave, your host of Boiled as an Owl. Welcome to episode 10. I am going to go over more about the inventory process, read a little bit from the Little Red Book, and wax poetic on sobriety. Hope you enjoy the episode, and let's dive in. Last time, I was talking about the emotional stuff that happens, and that was really interesting to dissect from my perspective. As I said, I'm doing this podcast, I'm in an AWOL group, and then on top of it, I have been really dissecting myself at a much deeper level by doing this work introspectively and then guided on a whole different front. Because when you're hanging out with 12 other men who are doing the work and really embracing the program, and they're actually trying really hard to do better in their lives, you get to see a lot of different perspectives on things. And the coolest part about it is you realize you're not as unique as you think you are. And that is what separates addicts and alcoholics from the general population. We think we're so unique that if you had my life, you would drink like I did. And if you had all the stuff going on in your world that doesn't make sense, you would have this problem too. I mean, why wouldn't you? So what ends up happening is we kind of shelter ourselves. And I love the line in the Big Book where he says, we have to wrap ourselves in cotton wool because we can't handle anything. And it's true until you actually get to a point where you can dissect all of your mental reasonings and actions for what they truly are. You never really make any progress in life or in the program or anything. So it's very imperative to really hone in our skills and become really adept at the 12-step process, because it's in the 12-step process, if again you choose to do the 12-step process, that you'll find a lot of the chinks in your armor, so to speak. And I think having done this process now for 5 years and really retooling it and reassessing it and bringing it to a much higher level, I have begun to see even deeper patterns that I'm either not willing to address or that I'm willing to address but don't know how to change. And I think it's amazing that at one point we reached out to a higher power and said, hey, I'm struggling here. I need help. I'm powerless over this thing. And I'm insane because I realize that I am powerless over this thing. And now I need your help to return me to sanity. And I'm going to decide to make a leap into a realm of possibility, which is a faith-based life, because my life was predicated on not so great decision making, not so great problem solving. And that's the big disservice we do to ourselves. And in the Little Red Book, it says, intolerance, lack of tolerance has much to do with the first drink, which under certain circumstances, the alcoholic is unable to resist. This condition existed when physical distress was experienced, when the realities of life became too demanding on our time and energy, when mental tension was great, when resentment at home or in business became unbearable, when business was poor, when we became fatigued through overactivity, or when we were faced with other distracting circumstances. We felt that conditions had reached a breaking point. We became intolerant of them, so we got drunk. We should never forget the intolerable hangovers, the despair of compulsive drinking, or God's help in its removal. We need more help with new problems. Do not expect God to eliminate them overnight. The practice of tolerance is a part of recovery. It aids spiritual progress and helps us control our emotions. It nurtures contented sobriety. So that's from the Little Red Book. And I agree with the idea of intolerance, but I also don't like the fact that we are intolerant per se, and that we need to get tolerance, because tolerance in and of itself, in my mind, is a trap, in that we're also not accepting life on life's terms. We're just tolerating it. What are we doing this program for? Not only are we doing it for alcoholic cessation, we're not drinking, we're trying to get rid of drinking by not taking that first drink, but inevitably we're trying to get rid of all of the bullshit in the way of our higher power. And you can liken it to a dam. If you have a dam and it's all blocked up, the trickle is very small compared to what's behind the dam. So we dam something up to control how much water's coming in or staying out. And when you think about your higher power, it's like plugging in to a power source. And if you don't have a really good pathway to tapping into that higher power, you're going to get the least amount of power you can imagine. I mean, it's still good, but it's not great. So what we need to end up doing is we need to end up looking at the power that we're connecting to and what's in the way of getting a full connection. And what's usually in the way of getting a full connection is this thing right here between your ears. It's, again, beliefs we've created, ideologies that we've embraced, the way we were brought up. A lot of us had an upbringing where we deferred to ideologies based on what our parents taught us. And some of their belief systems are faulty as well. If you're not growing in a direction that you're trying to take your life in, and you're just stagnant and everything just feels so contracted and so impossible with your own action, you're eventually going to hit that wall so hard that nothing is going to make sense other than picking up a drink or a drug, because all the compounding emotions and the compounding ideas that are relating to your disdain, your irritability, and your discontent eventually overpower any sense you could make of them. I took the drink away, but then I was left with all of the feelings and the fear was just so consuming. At first 8 months of sobriety, before I even got to the fourth step and my inventory, I was white knuckling it so hard because I wanted a whole new ideology and to embrace a whole new way of living. And I didn't trust it. I knew other people were doing it, and I could see the people that were actually working their program and practicing it in daily life. I could see the miracle that was happening for them, and I could put my faith in the idea that maybe it's working for them, maybe it could work for me. If I just surrender and I just accept life the way it is, and I don't reach out to something to change how I'm feeling, but rather embrace how I'm feeling, sit in that discomfort, that suffering that my mind is creating for me, embrace the fact that this is something that's happening outside of myself. And the biggest issue is that I'm not grounded, I'm not plugged in, and I'm not centered within. When you don't have that inner connection with your higher power, it's really hard to navigate upsetting situations, because if your inside world isn't at a place where you can rely on the feelings, the emotions, and the capacity that you have to navigate stress, then everything that comes at you is going to be a giant issue. And you're going to struggle. Intolerance, for me, is that issue. And so is tolerance, because even with tolerance, I'm not accepting it fully that this is my life, but I'm tolerating it. What do they say? Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And we are creating a bastion of strength, and that bastion of strength starts inside. And everything you start feeling inside inevitably reflects on the outside. When you hear in the program that if you're experiencing any kind of unrest or you're feeling any kind of anger or frustration, it's coming from within. And the way that works is you get to look and see what's happening outside. Who's bothering you? Who's making your life miserable in your own mind, in your own mind's conception? Who is the person that if they just did the thing the way you thought they should, that your life would be easier? And what you realize once you start getting deeper into your own recovery is that it's you. It's always you. The last person you're with is you. There are times when people are assholes, don't get me wrong. However, when you get to such a solid state in your recovery and people are doing the thing they're doing and it's not bothering you, that's true surrender and acceptance. And that's when you start experiencing the miracle on such a higher level. What ends up happening is the experiences that you're experiencing might contract you. And when you're in contracture, that's just being unplugged from your higher self, right? So you're experiencing discomfort, dis-ease, anger, frustration, intolerance, jealousy, self-pity. Again, all the cornerstones of addiction and the behaviors that we're trying to change so that we become recovered. And that contracture will usually start showing up as pain in your body, discomfort in your joints, possible issues with sleeping, issues with anxiety. So it's all based on the inner world, and the reflection outward is letting you know, hey, something's up. You're not in alignment with your higher power. And because of that, you're experiencing severe discomfort in your body, because that's how our body gets our attention. The mind, the body, and the heart is connected with your brain. I mean, there's so many studies that show how our gut, our heart, and our brain are aligned in regards to the ability to sense and feel and interpret our environment, whether it's within or without. So, yeah, we're getting there, right? We're doing all this inventory process because we're uncovering all of this crap that's in the way of experiencing a faith-based life. And that brings us to, fear. The tendency of alcoholics, again, from the Little Red Book, to discount fear as contributing to alcoholism often causes newcomers to underrate its importance to their inventories. They erroneously associate fear with cowardice and want no part of it. Yet fear had much to do with their drinking, and full knowledge of it is essential to their recovery. So not only did we have a list of resentments, I'm resentful at XYZ because they did this thing to me and it affected my pride, it affected my wallet, it affected my relationships, it affected my sex relationships, all of that. And then it brings us to a fear inventory. Fear is so necessary in our lives only because it helps us to understand when we're not connected to our source or our higher power. Whenever you're in fear, you start becoming afraid of all the little details, of all the little intricate issues in your life. And fear is a form of self-preservation, because if you don't act on your fear, you might not survive. So back in the day, before we had all this cool technology and, before we had all the ways in which we could survive without having to worry about getting eaten by bears and getting sick in the woods because we didn't have any shelters and all that stuff, we needed fear. Fear was a good indicator of like, hey, something's up. Let's get going. Now we have more comforts in our lives. Not everybody, but a good portion of us do. Most of us have homes, places that we can call our own so that we can kind of escape. A lot of us in recovery and addiction are coming out of homelessness or we're living in shelters. I mean, there's a lot of that. And, the fear of not understanding like what the next step is going to be or how my life is going to unfold. When you're in those situations, it's kind of hard to hold on to your ass and say, hey, help me out. But inevitably, if you keep doing the work and you keep busting your ass to embrace the new life, people are going to come into your reality. They're going to start helping you out, especially if they see how much effort and action you're putting into your program. And, you end up getting everything back. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I hate the slowies, but, it took me so many years to get to the dysfunction because I kept doing the pattern over and over and over again. So unless I'm willing to actually reverse engineer the pattern and do different things and oppose the pattern, I'm not going to ever really change anything. So with my heavy reliance on my higher power and doing all this inventory work, I get to see these patterns. I get to look at them and really say to myself, do I really want to change this thing? Or do I want it to stay a little bit more in my life? Because in my mind, it's so big and it's so ominous that I don't even know how I can achieve clearing the defects, the character liability. I'm at that point now where, having done all this work, having really looked at my fear and doing my fear inventory and understanding what those activators are in my behavior, has become so intense for me that I have literally been reaching out to my friends. I've been reaching out to my sponsor. I've been reaching out to a lot of people to help me stay grounded in all of it. We are walking through this process. Most of us are limping through it in the beginning. And without steps 1, 2, and 3, step 4 becomes a really big chore, because you have to really make sure that you understand that you're powerless over your addiction, that you're insane. Because if you weren't insane, you wouldn't be drinking and losing jobs and losing relationships, or just drinking because you're so stressed out. Maybe you're super successful and you're a multi-millionaire, but you're still drinking. Because a lot of people don't understand that you could still be an alcoholic and have not lost anything in your life, but you're still drinking alcoholically and you're still a mess and you're still full of fear, resentment, and anger. Yeah, but you might also have a very successful life, you think, but you're miserable. A lot of people think the alcoholic is the guy on the park bench, homeless. But, you go to the program and they say from Yale to jail for a reason. It's the truth. The meetings I go to, there are some really affluent men and women, and they didn't lose everything, but they lost their soul, so to speak. And watching even those people who have money that they can throw problems at, and seeing the humility and their ability to deep dive inside, and then see them have all this money, but their joy there, is such a cool process to see. And then seeing a poor person who is homeless, who is sleeping in the woods in a tent, be alcoholic and addict, and seeing their lives changing in such a drastic way that they went from nothing to now all of a sudden they're contemplating buying homes, or their ability to afford an apartment because they're working now and they're working the steps and they're working this miraculous life with faith. And it takes time. It really does. It takes a lot of time. I get angry at myself. I shouldn't, but I do, because I have 5 years of sobriety and I want to be better, faster, and it's not happening as fast as I would like it to happen. And so it just gets so intense sometimes. And that's why it's so important that we reach out to other people in our program, because when you do that, you can get a sense of how much they struggled too. even if they're working the most amazing program and they have a bunch of days, a decade or more of sobriety, and they really do walk the walk and talk the talk, and you can see, even though they got everything together, they still have some struggles too. And that just gives us that chance to keep moving forward. And I don't know, I'm always amazed at how simple this program is, but how our mindset complicates it. We then have to work on fear, and we need to figure out how to overcome our fear. But the only way to do that is to actually face what we're afraid of. And that's another piece of our inventory, because once you get to see your patterns from your resentments, you'll get to see why you had the resentments in the first place. And most of the time, it's because of a fear that was activated. Until we face all our patterns, we keep doing the damage. So it's a dance. And that's why I said it takes time to get there. So yeah, so we've talked about fear. We have to really look at anger. Again, anger, unfortunately, can drive a person to drink. We end up talking about justifiable anger. And there's a lot of times in our lives where we've been justified in our anger. However, and this is where it gets sticky for a lot of people. I'm still struggling with this on my own. The people in your lives, how they're responding and reacting to life, and they don't have a program. They're just doing what you did prior to your trying to understand yourself. And they keep doing the same behavioral issues over and over and over again. And you stay centered, you do your prayer work, you do your meditation, and then you get in touch with them, or you're in person with them, and then they do the thing they do, and you get so annoyed and upset because you just don't understand why you always have to be the bigger person. And you know why you have to be the bigger person? And I hate it with all my heart, but I'm trying to get through it. You have to be the bigger person because you know better. And because you know better, you now have to either put boundaries in place, or you have to accept the fact that they're never going to change no matter what. And you have to pray for them. You literally have to pray and just say, hey, God, can you just help them, please? You don't know what they need. You think you know what they need only because of how the behavior upsets you. But in reality, you don't know what help they need. So sometimes just a quick, hey, God, can you help them and help me and help our relationship to the best of your ability, and do what you got to do to bring some kind of peace in this relationship. That's the key. Sometimes you have to walk away. Walking away from people you love hurts like hell. But if they're constantly hurting you and you're always trying to be the bigger person and nothing changes, sometimes walking away is the best thing to do, because you get a sense that you're walking away, your silence helps them to maybe understand that the way they treat you or the way they speak to you is no longer something you're willing to put up with. So that's love. You love them by walking away. That's why it's so crucial for people to walk away from toxic relationships. Doesn't matter if it's family, doesn't matter if it's a relationship that's romantic. If it's toxic and there's pain involved, sometimes you got to just walk away, and your inventory will show you that. And it'll show you how you pick relationships. It'll show you your anger. And unfortunately, anger can be very destructive. It can also be very productive if you're understanding why you're angry. And a lot of times the anger is coming from frustration, anxiety, depression, sadness, and grief, because you're longing for a change in somebody, and the thing isn't happening, and the anger is the fuel, the fire you need to change the course of your life, to change the direction or the trajectory of how you're traveling. So it's super important to do this stuff. It's super important to understand your anger, and it's super important to Understand your blind spots from the Little Red Book. Blind spots. Despite our sincere efforts to make honest inventories of all the flaws in our makeup that caused our failure, some defects will not be recorded. Why? Simply because we fail to see them. Our mental and moral vision has been blinded too long by alcoholic reservation and rationalization. It is necessary to reserve space in our inventories for the blind spots we will later uncover. We should not worry about these undisclosed defects, but tolerate their existence and let AA as a way of life reveal them. We then list them for correction. So that's the whole take on inventory. We got a lot of work to do to create a sustainable life that's based in faith and a higher power. And that's what you need to do to make this 12-step program work. If you're going to do AA, the key to AA is to develop a higher power of your understanding. And again, it doesn't need to be based on any religion. Make your higher power so big and bold that it would never be able to let you down, because our minds are very small in regards to how we think about things. But there's a larger, broader aspect of us that's not in this physical body that is connected to all that is. And when you can define your higher power, for me, my higher power can see around corners, knows what's coming weeks and weeks before it happens, even years before it happens, provides me with comfort when I am so miserable, and loves me without judgment and knows me better than I know myself. My higher power is concerned about my well-being and my welfare, that when I let go of my self-will and course correct through prayer and meditation, I then achieve more sanity, more joy, and the ability to maintain my inner peace. So those are all the ways in which you need to really work with this program and run with the ideologies of it. And that's that for today. So thank you for watching. Really appreciate it. If you want to support the show, there's a link to buy a coffee. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you're having a good day. And I hope that you stay in the center of your program, and that you allow yourself a slow recovery. It doesn't have to be a grinding recovery, but it can be slow and methodical. I hope you all have a good day. Take care. Again, Dave F., your host, and I'll end with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Your will, not mine, be done. Thanks.